Hello, everyone, and thank you for being on the webinar today. My name is Jeff Anderson, founder and president of Centrion IT Solutions, where we specialize in helping fast growth companies to protect themselves from cybercrime, manage their IT, and leverage new technologies to gain a competitive advantage. Now, before we go too far, I'd like to make sure that everybody can hear me okay. So if you could just find the Q&A box and just type something in there that says, yes, or I can hear you, something like that, just so that we know that everybody can hear us. Okay, so I got a few people saying they can hear me, so that's great. So just to continue on, today I'm going to show you how I've been able to help business owners, like many of you listening today, to drastically reduce their security risks and keep their network safe and secure for the past 19 years. I think most of you are going to be shocked at what I'm going to share, but the good news is that once I share it, you'll now know about these threats and you'll be able to protect yourself and your organization against this growing army of cyber criminals who are working basically day and night to hack your system, steal data, corrupt your organization, and rob you blind. Now, I know you're likely on this webinar today because you're concerned, and rightly so, about protecting yourself and your company from the vast and growing number of cyber threats out there today, be it ransomware, bank and credit card fraud, rogue employees, data theft, or simply being down for hours or days due to a virus or an employee mistake. And ultimately, I know you're here to make sure that you don't lose everything you've worked so hard to achieve in an instant, especially since it can be prevented. The good news in all of this is that most of it can be prevented, or at the very least, your risks significantly reduced with a few simple things put into place now. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to cover a couple of important topics. We're going to talk about the #1 security threat to your business that antivirus, firewalls, and other security protocols can't protect against. I'm going to reveal a shocking truth about bank fraud that most business owners don't know about that could literally wipe out their bank accounts. You'll learn why firewalls and antivirus simply aren't enough anymore. And finally, you'll learn how mobile phones and cloud apps are seriously jeopardizing your organization's security and data protection and what to do about it. And ultimately, what we're going to cover is how to avoid being a sitting duck to cyber criminals and to protect what you've worked so hard for. The reality is that most of you are already using cloud services and already have employees using mobile devices to work. It's a trend that's not showing any signs of slowing down. However, most companies are adding on these elements in a kind of a slapdash, haphazard way instead of being smart and strategic about it. And because of that, they're making potentially expensive mistakes and exposing themselves to unnecessary risks. Now, before I continue, I just want to take a minute to tell you about 2 special bonuses I'm going to make available at the end of this session. First is a cybersecurity risk assessment, and second is a dark web scan report. Now, the cybersecurity risk assessment, this is an extremely valuable service. We normally charge $647 for this because it takes many hours for us to put these together. But in recognition of your spending the time with me today here, I'm willing to waive that charge and will provide it to you absolutely free. The second part is a dark web scan, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later on, but essentially this will tell you if your organization's credentials, your passwords and logins and whatnot are on the dark web and being sold to cyber criminals around the world. So just hang in to the end and I'll talk about how you can get those for your organization. Now, before we get rolling, I know some of you here today that I've never met. So for those people, just let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Jeff. I'm a veteran business technology strategist, and I specialize in helping small businesses to firstly secure and then manage their technology so that they can focus their attention on revenue producing activities and growing the business. I'm originally from a small town in Vaughan, lived down in Toronto for 10 years, and then I moved up to the northwest of the GTA in around 2010. I founded Centrion IT Solutions over 19 years ago, and I've been in and around the industry for probably about 25 years, all said. My passion really is helping other small business owners to grow their businesses, and I do this from a technology angle by first helping them to protect everything that they've already got, and then by using new technologies to drive growth and help them with that. Now, I just wanted to talk about a little topic here in terms of cybersecurity. So you may be familiar with the gentleman here in the picture with me. This is Robert Herjavec. He was a dragon on CBC's Dragon's Den and is currently a shark on Shark Tank on ABC. And he's known as the nice shark, and he is generally a nice shark. But I've had the privilege of attending a couple of talks with him over the years, and a couple of things struck me. I don't know if you know this, but he actually is a self-made multimillionaire, and he's the founder of global managed IT security firm Herjavec Group, which is actually based in Toronto, but they have offices in the U.S. and elsewhere. So in one of his talks that I attended, he basically said, and I'm slightly paraphrasing here, but he said he always thought that cybersecurity would have tremendous growth, but he didn't think it was going to be something that would be around forever. Eventually, it would be licked, and solved. He since has realized, though, that cybersecurity is not simply a planet in the IT solar system, but rather it is its own entire galaxy. And so basically what this means is that for any business, even small ones, you can't pretend any longer that you don't have to take it seriously. So why am I urgently informing all small business owners about these cybersecurity risks now? Well, over the last year, there has been a significant increase in the sophistication, the frequency, and the severity of cybercrime attacks, and which I'll be covering more of in a moment. Because of this, we've been watching these trends and putting in place a combination of new technologies, protocols, and services to help protect our clients. However, many of the things that worked even three years ago, or even in some cases 1 year ago or 2 years ago, are no longer effective. Plus, the attacks are becoming more frequent, more vicious, and they're carrying much bigger consequences. So this is why I'm talking to you today. This is a very real and very serious threat that is escalating, and we are urgently, we're urgently contacting all clients to get this information into their hands. So here's an example of the fact that the losses are growing. As you can see on the screen here, the losses. So 2014, 800.5 million or $1 million, and then here we're over at 2018. And it's $2.7 billion, right? So this is on a trajectory, and this is not going to slow down. So, and in terms of the attacks becoming more vicious and more frequent, for the first time in history, cybercrime is now the most prevalent type of crime against businesses, right? So that's a big one. There were 137.5 million new malware samples, and malware is malicious software, so viruses, ransomware, Trojans, that kind of thing. So there were 137.5 million new malware samples in 2018, and we're already at 25 million new samples in 2019. So it's definitely going along here, not for the better. In 2018, 93% of malware was polymorphic, meaning it has the ability to change its code to evade detection. So traditional antivirus doesn't work on this. Now, I just want to ask you, I've got a number here on the screen, $107,785. And what do you think this number is? You can yell it out to yourself. Obviously, I can't hear you, or you can put it in the Q&A box. Well, it's actually the average cost for a cyber attack on a small business. Yep, $107,000. Additional damages and costs that may not be included in the above number, well, that includes embarrassment of appearing stupid and irresponsible to clients, employees, etc. The cost of protecting employee and client data after the fact, including buying credit monitoring for your staff, the reputational damage, loss of credibility in the marketplace. Competition will have a heyday over your misery, unfortunately. Loss of clients for not protecting data or being unable to service them. And class action lawsuits, individual lawsuits, again, could come from employees, could come from customers or clients. Legal fees to handle a breach. Compliance lawsuits, in other words, fines for non-compliance. Replacement of data that's corrupted or locked from ransomware. And the real cost of downtime and lost productivity. So it's a lot. And you say to yourself, well, if it's so common, why don't I hear more about it? Well, it's quite simple. It's extremely embarrassing to admit that you've been hacked, and most companies would rather not. Many people or companies don't even know that they've been hacked until it's revealed in a cyber risk assessment. In a lot of cases, the statistic is it takes 6 months plus before most breaches are even discovered. It's horrible PR. Do you really want your clients to know that their information was accessed? Do you really want your employees to know that their private information was accessed? No, of course not. And lastly, the legal ramifications. There's fines, there's lawsuits, legal fees, and these can be significant. So as a result, many incidents just stay hushed up and get buried. So moving on here, I just want to provide a quick overview of the sophistication and the proliferation of the cybercrime business, because it has changed over the years. It's not some pimple-faced kid in his mother's basement anymore. It's now a very sophisticated business, which is well-funded, well-organized, but unlike other businesses, yours, mine, pretty much any other one, they don't have to follow the rules, and they don't. So in the old days, the crime business was pretty simple. You bought a gun or a knife, you hid in a dark alley, and when someone walked by, you jumped out and you said, stick them up, and you took their money. Your startup costs and your overhead were low, and as long as you didn't get caught, you were okay. But of course, just like any other business owner, criminals started thinking, hey, how can I grow this business? And of course, technology answered that question for them, and trains came along. So instead of robbing one person at a time, you could now rob 200 or 300 people at a time. And robbing trains was far more lucrative than robbing individuals, because these trains were crossing remote areas typically, where there weren't organized police forces. Secondly, individuals who were wealthy enough to afford a train ticket in those days were worth robbing, and here they were rounded up and sitting in a single convenient location. Today, thanks to advancements in technology and the ever-increasing trend of storing financial and personal information, with other providers and in the cloud, the new train robberies are cybercrime. All right, so think about it. If a criminal wanted to rob 100,000 people at once, they couldn't do it in the old-fashioned way. It would just be physically impossible. Today, all that's needed is a single hack into a single system, a large platform, and they can use advanced technology to instantly rob millions. And they are, as you can tell by the increasing number of attacks that make the news every day. So here's one example. You may remember the JP Morgan credit card hack a few years back. It wasn't one person stealing a single credit card. It was one person, or maybe a small group of people, who stole tens of millions of personal credit cards and 7 million small to medium business credit cards in one fell swoop. And it was right on the heels of the Target and the Home Depot attacks, where 40 and 56 million credit cards respectively stolen. So think about that. Never in the history of humanity has any one person or a small group of people been able to rob so many so quickly in one fell swoop. And here's another example. You may remember the Equifax breach. So in that breach, 147 million people's information was stolen, right? Very, very, very personal information, names, phone numbers, addresses, in the States, social security numbers, for Canada, social insurance numbers, all that kind of thing, right? Like very detailed information. They knew everything about these people. And what does this allow them to do? Well, they use the data and they open credit cards, they take out loans or mortgages in the person's name. They can steal tax refunds from the government by filing a return with your name on it. And they can also create highly targeted phishing scams. So phishing scams when they send you emails that look legit, but that aren't, because now they know which banks you deal with. They know, a lot of information about you, and they can make these really, really convincing. And they can do them for, from your, look like you're from your bank or from another vendor. And once they get into your computer, then they just have a field day. So this is another one. We get this a lot. You may be thinking, well, we're just a small business. We're not Target or Home Depot or whatever, and so nobody would want to hack us. Well, that's wrong. Firstly, larger companies have very sophisticated security systems in place and armies of trained professionals monitoring them around the clock. They're not easy to hack. Therefore, if they are getting hacked, getting into the average small businesses network is a cakewalk, right? Which is actually why you're a bigger threat than these larger organizations. Now, the prize might not be as big, but you're far easier to rob than larger institutions, and that makes you a prime target. And since cyber criminals have automated tools, they can make a large sum of money simply by targeting a few hundred or 1,000 small businesses. You just don't hear about these attacks because they don't make national news, of course. The papers and the TV the channels, they want the big news. They want the big stories that are going to captivate the audience. It's, Joe Blow's, retail store, on Yonge Street. That doesn't make national news. Secondly, most small businesses don't even know they've been hacked. I mentioned this before. They don't know until they get a proper audit done, or something happens and it just comes up, but average is 6 months later. So here's some sobering statistics. 1 in 5 small businesses falls victim to cybercrime each year, and that is growing. And secondly, half of all cyber attacks are now aimed at SMBs for the reasons I just talked about there. It's basically low-hanging fruit. So why do they target small businesses? Well, as I say, most small businesses are low-hanging fruit given the lack of security. They don't have the sophisticated security. They don't have the trained professionals. They're not being monitored, and most of the time they don't even know. The laws safeguarding business bank accounts aren't as strong as they are for personal accounts, and that's a revelation that a lot of people don't realize. And lastly, small businesses don't typically encrypt their data, so it's readily available data to sell behind an easy to pick lock. But stealing money isn't the only motivation. I mean, they can quickly and easily sell stolen client data that they swipe. They can use your server for sending spam emails, processing stolen credit cards, or hosting illegal software and content, and thus perpetuating the whole cycle. Sometimes they're in it for fun, bragging rights, but we find this is getting less and less. That's more of the old school hacker that's doing it for notoriety. Ideology, they feel a big company is doing something they don't agree with. Lastly, it could be espionage. They could be stealing secrets, confidential information that could be sold to competitors. So the key point here is just because maybe you aren't that worried about your information being stolen doesn't mean that your customers' information or your business partners' information and privacy are any less valuable to them. So the big question is, what are you doing to be a good steward of their information? The biggest danger here is your complacency, right? Please do not underestimate the importance of addressing and protecting yourself from this threat. Right, the financial and reputational ramifications, not to mention the aggravation, the business interruption, and the anxiety this brings is routinely underestimated. Right, and here's a little fact: most fire alarms are sold to people who've had a fire after they've lost everything. Most home security systems are sold the same way, after someone has already violated their home, stolen things, shaken up their sense of security, upset their wife and their kids. And all of those people never thought it would happen to them, which is why they didn't have a fire alarm or a burglar alarm on their house, right? One single breach can produce hours of extra work for your already overburdened employees, days, if not weeks of downtime, irate clients, cash flow disrupted by down systems, inability to service clients or take orders, possibly even the inability to make payroll if your payroll account is compromised and the funds are gone. Right? And all of this will end up at the business owner's office. Right? It all, the buck stops here. It ends up in your lap. Now, here's something people don't know about. We actually have a new Canadian data breach law that came in last year. Now, we've lagged behind the rest of the world with data breach disclosure laws for a long time, but things are tightening up recently. They're still nowhere near as tight as in the States or in Europe, but we're getting there. So the first thing is all companies are now required to disclose data breaches to the affected users and to the federal government as soon as they become aware of them. And then the second part is the fine for failing to report a breach to authorities is up to $100,000 per occurrence. And for failing to notify victims is up to $100,000 per individual. So needless to say, this can add up really quickly. Additionally, as you can see from the article on the right, the requirement to notify affected persons also makes the possibility of lawsuits, including class action suits, a very likely possibility going forward. And I think you're going to see more and more of this because, once people are told that their information has been stolen, and they're going to want blood. So moving on here, these are the three big threats to your business these days. Okay, so number one to your number one threat to your business is your employees, right? Even good employees make mistakes. They delete files, they click on phishing emails, they innocently log into a compromised Facebook page while they're on their lunch break. Of course, they would never do that during working hours. Employees often use free and unsecured file sharing applications and cloud applications to share confidential information simply because they don't know better, or because it's simpler than going through IT or trying to find the proper solution, and they don't even think to tell you about it. And with more people using personal devices for work, so think smartphones or their personal laptops or tablets, what have you, the perimeter of your network can easily be compromised, and it's harder to protect. In the old days, all the devices for the company were in the office, they were within the company network, and they were much easier to protect. Now they're spread out all over the place. Mobile computing is everywhere, right? You can also think about disgruntled employees, vendors. They pose a huge threat if their accounts are left active. They can come back days, weeks, years later, and they've been known to delete data, steal software, intellectual property, customer lists. They can use it their next job. But again, they don't get the same attention on the news as cyber attacks caused by hackers because, frankly, from a news perspective, it's boring, right? It's like, oh, somebody's employee went back and stole some stuff. They're not going to cover it, right? But it's a real issue. So, and this is another one. Speaking of using cloud apps, so shadow IT. So shadow IT is basically technology that's present inside a company, but which has not been, officially ordained by management, nor has it been vetted, controlled, or monitored by the IT department or the outsourced IT provider to ensure that it meets, the company's security protocols. So common examples include free services like Dropbox, Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, the free one. And while these are convenient, and definitely they are, you need to get a file somewhere and it won't fit through your email because of the limits. This is definitely easier. They're putting the company's data at risk in the process. For example, a few years ago, 7 million Dropbox passwords were hacked, and that gave the hackers complete and unfettered access to those accounts and the files they contain, right? So just think if, what might be on there, from a company, right? Payroll data, accounting information, quotes, intellectual property, who knows? I mean, it could be anything, but safe to say it probably wasn't meant to be exposed to the world. So now moving on, the number 2 risk to businesses is from malware and ransomware, right? So new malware threats, there's 350,000 are being released every day. That's per day, not per year, not per week, not per month, per day. And malware attacks rose 79% last year. So, these are the kind of things that a simple firewall and antivirus is just not sophisticated enough to prevent these. So it's like having just a firewall and antivirus is like trying to stop a tank with a squirt gun, right? So ransomware, well, it's on the rise, right? And just a little fun joke here. So a writer once asked a literary agent, what kind of writing pays the most? And her answer was simple: ransom notes. Malware for smartphones is also increasing as more people use them for financial transactions. Over 60% of online fraud is now accomplished through mobile platforms, and 80% is carried out through mobile apps. And as you can see here, 2012, 214,000. 2018, now this is slightly out of date, but gives you an idea. This is the number of malware samples that are on the Android application app store, the Google Play Store, right? So it's a lot. The number 3 risk, bank fraud. Now, CDIC, that's the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation. It was created by Parliament in 1967, but it was designed to protect you against bank insolvency. So that's banks going bankrupt. And it covers deposits up to a specific amount and only in specific account types. For more details, you'd have to check with CDIC. They have a website. However, the CDIC does not protect you against money being fraudulently transferred out of your account by wire transfer or ETF. And often, if you don't catch and report it within the same business day, the money is gone and cannot be returned. And the bank is not necessarily responsible for getting your money back. So let that sink in for a minute, right? Money can be taken from your business bank account or personal account, and the bank is not necessarily responsible for getting your money back. How can this be? Well, it's very simple. How they do this in a lot of cases, and we've seen this examples through our client base and also from companies that come to us after the fact looking to get secured. Basically, they trick somebody in the accounting department at a company into transferring money by ETF or wire transfer. Usually it's an email that comes in. It's purportedly from somebody higher up, the president or whatever, and hey, we've got this new supplier, and we need to get some cash over to these guys so they can hold this order for us, and just send it over here and I'll do the paperwork later, right? And so the unwitting employee, they think this is a legit email from their boss. They don't want to anger him and lose the order or lose the deal, right? So they just go ahead and they follow orders. Well, they say they're just following orders. Well, that's basically what the bank says too. The bank is just following your orders. You told them to send this money by wire transfer, right? So they're just following your orders. It's not their system that's being hacked. It's the employee effectively that's being hacked. It's social engineering. They're tricking the employee into doing something, right? And I actually had this discussion myself. I had a meeting with our own company, a banker. I'm not going to say which bank it is, but suffice to say, I literally had this conversation 2 weeks ago with them. And I said, do you see this a lot? And they said, yeah, we see this all the time. And we have to tell these people, look, we'll try to get the money back if we can, but in a lot of cases, the wire transfers, they go worldwide, right? So the money, it goes to China, and then it gets ping pong. They pick it up from there, and then they transfer it to Russia. And you'll never find it. It just ping pongs all around the world, right? You'll never find it unless you're really, really quick about it. So this is a big problem, and you need to be really, really concerned about it. So how do you protect yourself? Well, unfortunately, there is no single quick fix, right? Maintaining the security of a business network requires a continuous multi-pronged strategy and constant vigilance. This is the new reality we live in. At Centrion, we have developed our proprietary system over the past 17 years, and we continually reevaluate and update it as new threats emerge. So, number one thing you need to have is a business-grade firewall, right? The firewall is the only thing that stands between your business's internal network and the internet, which is where the cyber criminals live, right? So you want to have a really, really good, strong business-grade firewall, right? You do not want to trust this to a $50 router that you got at the big box store and just call it good enough. It's not good enough, right? A business-grade firewall will actively and the keyword is actively protect your business from a multitude of threats, both inside and out. So it not only prevents people from getting into the network, right? It also prevents information from going out of the network. So it's two ways, right? The low cost routers, they are only incoming and not very good at that. The other thing is that they basically have no reporting, right? So, even if somebody did manage to break in, you probably wouldn't know. It has no way to tell you. So the bottom line is every business needs a good firewall. Number two, business grade anti-malware. So it used to be called antivirus. It's now called anti-malware because it protects against other types of threats as well. So the business grade part means that it's more robust than the typical home PC type antivirus software. It's also centrally managed so that changes are applied to all computers on the network equally with less risk of accidentally missing any, right? It's continuously monitored to ensure that it's up to date and actually running on all computers. I can't tell you how often we go into clients, not clients, but prospects, and to run our risk assessments, and we find that there's a bunch of machines that either don't have the software, or the software is out of date, or something went wrong with it. I mean, who knows? But the bottom line is it's not protecting them, right? And lastly, it's typically sold just on a continual basis, right? So there's no subscriptions and expiry dates to worry about, because that's another thing we find is that they had a particular piece of software on there, and it was they forgot to renew it, and so it just expires basically, and it's ineffective at that point if it hasn't been kept up to date. Pardon me while I take a drink. Number three, business grade email security. So it's not really about those annoying spam emails for the little blue pills anymore. This is not the big target. Email is now the most common attack vector for malware distribution. So basically, they're using phishing, which is sending fake messages that look real and trying to get you to either run an attachment or click a link that takes you to a website where you enter information unwittingly, thinking that it's a real site, your bank or what have you. The companies, so even small ones, are now being actively targeted by cyber criminals. So they'll get a hold of a list of employees and they'll start faking messages from one person to another. And this all ties back into that scam I mentioned about the bank fraud, where you'll get a message that looks like it came from the president or the owner of the company, but it actually doesn't. And this is one of those. Untrained employees can be easily tricked by phishing emails that look legit, but lead them to somewhere nasty. Number four, good password hygiene. And yes, we harp on about this a lot in IT. Unfortunately, we're probably going to have to keep doing that. It's just as important as good dental hygiene. That's a cheap joke. So don't use the same password for everything. Create hard to guess passwords and use a password manager to keep track of them. There's a couple of good password managers on the market. I'll let you guys go and Google for that to find them. But essentially, a password manager is like a vault. So it has one main password, or you can use your thumbprint or whatever on your smartphone, and you keep all your passwords in there, safe and secure, but it's easy to get at them when you need to. So you can have a different password for everything, a complex password, and still have a way you don't have to remember them all, in your head. We also advise to change your passwords a few times per year. Most people don't do this, I'm going to be honest, but it's definitely recommended at least once per year. And if you have the option, use two-factor authentication. There's different types of this. Some of them, like banks, if you enable it, when you try to log in, so you put your username and your password, they will then text you a one-time use code of numbers to your phone, to your cell phone, and then you have to enter that back in. So basically, what it's doing is it's saying, okay, something I know, but also something I have is present. So chances are the cyber criminal, they may have your username and your password, but chances are they probably don't have your cell phone in their hands. So it's one more, hurdle that they would have to get over. Number 5, educate your people, right? Number one threat is people. And the sad reality is they like to click things. So security awareness training, it teaches them how to spot the phishing emails and the rogue websites, how to handle suspicious pop-ups, know what not to click on, and know when to contact IT support for help, right? Because knowing when you're in over your head and when to contact a pro, very important. Number 6, business continuity. Now, this is somewhat related to backups, but it goes a lot further than just plain old backups or even a full disaster recovery system. Essentially, it allows your business to be back up and running fast after virtually any disaster, especially ransomware, which is a huge problem these days. Very often using these systems, we can have companies back up and running fully within an hour, usually even a half an hour. It just depends. Number 7, this is a little bit of it's not really a technological solution, it's kind of an insurance solution, but we do recommend now for all our clients that they get cyber insurance. So cyber insurance is essentially, it's a policy, and depending on, the specific policy and the carrier, it can protect against things like losses from data breaches by hackers, fraudulent banking transactions, reputation damage on social media, lawsuits from business partners, customers, or employees, all those kind of things. And they're constantly evolving this, but it's very, very important that if you do get a cyber insurance policy, you read the fine print, because we've heard some reports recently about specific carriers, and it was in the US. I must admit it wasn't in Canada. I don't know if it's as prevalent here, but they were started because of the number of claims that are being made on these policies. They're tightening up on what they will allow. So they're putting a lot of exclusions in there. So make sure that you read the details and know what you're getting into and what is covered and what is not, because insurance companies, as is typical, they will use anything to get out of paying that they can. So bottom line, you need to get serious about protecting your company against cybercrime, right? But what does that look like? Well, 3 steps to protecting your organization. Okay, number 1, get a threat assessment, right? It's going to tell you what's lacking right now. Are your systems truly being backed up? Where are you exposed to the risk? So you'll actually know where the risk is. Second, create an action plan and implement it. So based on what's discovered, you create an action plan and then you implement to protect if and when an attack happens, because it's likely that it will. This prevents you basically from being an easy target. There's no 100% protection, but you want to make sure that you're not low-hanging fruit. And then step 3 is ongoing maintenance. This is definitely not where you want to take a set it, forget it approach. Your attackers are constantly working at this. It's as though you have somebody at your front door of your house jiggling your lock and trying to pick it constantly, right? So you got to stay vigilant. You got to make sure that you don't put your guard down. The good news is the first step is free. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we are offering for all attendees a free cyber risk assessment and a dark web scan for your organization, right? When the cyber risk assessment is complete, you will know if you and your employees' login credentials are being sold on the dark web, and I can pretty well, based on my experience, guarantee that 1 or more are, and you'd be surprised what we find. You'll know if your IT systems are truly secured from hackers, cyber criminals, rogue employees, and basically loss, right? You'll get a health score for your network to determine the areas that are outdated, unsupported, slow, problematic, and basically how your network ranks against other companies of your size in your industry. And you'll know if your current backup would allow you to restore 100% of your data and be up and running again fast if ransomware locked all your files. And to be totally honest, in about 99% of the networks that we've assessed, they were shocked to discover they were not. Now, it's degrees. They, might get 100% data back, but it might not be fast, or it might be fast, but they don't get 100%. So basically, those are the 2 things you're looking for. As I mentioned, everyone who signs up will get a dark web scan report, and this is basically the dark web is where the cyber criminals. It's basically the fence. If you know in the movies, you know you got the thief and he goes in and he steals a TV from somebody's house, and then he needs to unload it, so he goes to his quote unquote fence, and the fence buys it off him and then sells it on, right? So that's his way to get quick cash. Well, the dark web, among other things, is where the cyber criminals go. So the cyber criminals that steal the data, they don't necessarily know what to do with it, or they don't want to actually be the ones trying to extract the value out of it. They just steal the data and they want to sell it on. So what they do is they post it up on these online marketplaces on the dark web, and then other cyber criminals come and buy the information and then use it. So in the case of like credit card data, the one set would steal the data. They would post it. You know, these other guys come in, they buy that information, and then they're the ones that go out and actually start buying stuff on Amazon or all over the place to get the value out of the credit card data, right? Because you have to get it basically transfer the virtual data that you have into something physical that you can sell. So you know, products or money, what have you. So that's basically what that is, and it'll tell you. The report will tell you if any of your company email accounts have any information listed on the dark web, and we can even give you part of the password. We can't give you the whole password, but we can give you part of the password for a lot of them, and just to prove that it's real. Now, there are three things you need to know. I can only work with 3 companies to do the assessment. This is because it takes quite a bit of time to do it. As I said, you know, we're looking at many hours to do the scan, put the report together, and show it to you. So unfortunately, we have to limit it to 3 at this time. But there's absolutely no obligation to buy or do anything. We're trying to basically get the word out here, right? We just want companies to protect themselves better. So whether they get the assessment, get the report, and then come back to us and say, hey, you know, we need you to implement it for us. We need you to make us safe. We're happy to do that. But if they want to, you know, take it to their in-house guy or someone else or try to do it themselves, that's okay too. We would, you know, prefer obviously that they deal with us, but we're okay with that. So there's absolutely no obligation. There's no heavy sales pressure. We don't believe in doing that. And then lastly, this is by application only. So we can't take everybody that applies necessarily. I want to make sure first that I can actually help an organization before we book the consultation and go forward with it, right? So you're going to apply, and then we'll let you know if you've been selected. If we think we actually can help you, then we'll send you the information about how to proceed further. Now, I just want to stress again, please don't put this off thinking that it can't happen to you. It won't happen to you, right? It happens all the time. We know you're extremely busy. We know there's an enormous temptation to discard this, shrug it off, worry about it later, dismiss it. There's a million other things to do. It's undoubtedly the easy choice, but the easy choice is rarely the right choice. I can pretty much guarantee this. At some point, you will have to deal with a cybersecurity incident. Remember, half of all small businesses are hit every year, right? Half. Hopefully, you'll be brilliantly prepared for it and you'll experience only a minor inconvenience. But if you wait and you do nothing, I can practically guarantee that it will be more costly, more disruptive, and more devastating than if you had prepared. If you're a business owner, you've spent a lifetime working hard to get where you are. You don't want to let some lowlife thief operating outside the law from another country get away with taking all that from you. And you certainly don't hope that your IT guy has you covered. Get the facts, get the assessment, and be certain that you're protected. And if you're not protected, at least you know where you need to improve. So here's what you need to do now. You need to go to the link below and fill in the application form. So it's at www.centryon, SENTRYON, -it.com/activate. And we can only take the first 3, and it's basically on a first come, first serve basis. And unfortunately, we can't make any exceptions. So with all that said, if you have any questions, please click on the Q&A link above and submit your questions, and I will take them. Okay, so we've got one question here, and it's from John. John wants to know about VPN. So you probably, if you're around on the internet, you probably hear about this quite a lot. I notice on YouTube there's a lot of ads about this. So VPN, well, it stands for Virtual Private Network, but without getting into the technical, the way that they're basically what they're trying to do with it, what they're suggesting you do with it these days is to use it as a way so that your internet provider can't see what websites you're visiting and what you're doing online. So it basically creates, it's a way to connect to the internet that they can't see what you're doing. Normally, if you just connect, they can see everything you're doing. The other possibility for VPN is also sometimes used for access to corporate networks. So it's a more secure way for people that are working at home to connect into the office network and access the corporate applications that are hosted on the company server in the office. Okay, so we've got another question here, and this one's from Barbara, and it is what password manager do you recommend? Well, uh, we have a couple of options. One of them is called LastPass, LASTPASS. We found that one's pretty good. And then the other one that we've also had experience with is called Dashlane, DASHLANE. And you can Google either of those. And effectively what they do is it allows you to have access to your list of passwords, but in a more secure fashion, rather than putting them in a spreadsheet or some other open exposed way that anybody with access to your computer can get and then go and have a field day with. So I'll just give it a few more minutes and see if there's any more questions. Okay, so I don't see any more questions, so we'll just wrap it up for today. Thank you to everybody for attending. I really appreciate your time today. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel to reach out to me. My email address is G as in George or Jeff Anderson at centrion-it.com. So again, it's G Anderson at centrion-it.com. Thanks again, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.